Hi, everyone. Just so you know, I'm starting the recording for today's meeting. We'll just give everyone another minute or two to join. Hey, Heather.
Hey there. How are you? Good to see everybody.
Doing well. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started, I guess, if that works for everyone. Okay, so we have a pretty straightforward agenda today. Just going to share a few brief announcements, and then we have selected a few bills for Ben and Annette from CHHS to review with us. Heather, did you want to say anything to kick things off?
No, just thanks to everybody for being here. I believe that we have a couple representatives from our General Assembly Leadership's Office for our bill sponsors, so as well as agency partners who've taken the time out of a very busy session to come and share a little insight with all of our colleagues here on the call today about these bills. And so much appreciation to everybody for being here, either for bringing your expertise about the minute-to-minute of what's happening with these bills, as well as those who are listening to take that back to your own community and professional work. So thanks again for being here.
Thanks, Heather.
Yeah. Turn it over to Ben, or you.
I'm just going to say a few things. I didn't introduce myself. My name is Annika Lefebvre. I'm the Food Systems Resilience Coordinator with the Maryland Department of Emergency Management. So just a few FSRC announcements. The full council is meeting this Thursday, February 6th from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. They will be doing their annual ethics training. It's open to the public and anyone can participate if they wish to. I believe we'll also be hearing from the Maryland Department of Agriculture about the LEAF program that is currently being developed. The next Communication and Coordination Committee meeting will be next Monday, and Environment and Production will also meet next week. That's pretty much it. Please feel free to reach out always to the council's email address, which is at the bottom of this flyer, if you have any questions or want to get more involved with the council. Oh, and let's see, do we have Nancy here on the call today? No. Okay, so we did just want to share that the council, Dr. Lansing from the FSRC and University of Maryland provided testimony on behalf of the FSRC last week regarding the House Bill 9, the Public Safety Food Systems Resiliency Council Definitions and Reports Bill. That is the bill that specifically had to do with some language updates that the council requested last fall. And she also provided testimony on House Bill 42, the Solid Waste Disposal Surcharge and Wasted Food Reduction and Diversion Fund and grant programs. So those recordings are available online on the General Assembly's website if anyone's interested in watching that testimony, and we'll also be sharing links to that when it becomes the written testimony when it becomes publicly available. Ben, I'm turning it over to you.
Thank you, Annika. I'm going to just get the slides up and going here, and then we can get started. So just a reminder, we have our tracking resources, both for the bills that we're going to discuss today and the priority bills that we've discussed on previous calls. We have separate tabs on this tracking sheet, which is linked here. I know Annika will send out these slides after the meeting is over. So we have tabs for both House and Senate priority bills, and then a bunch of other non-priority bills that we are nonetheless still tracking that relate to some of the work that the FSRC does. Also a reminder that we are maintaining this FSRC legislative tracking calendar. So the calendar has the dates of committee hearings for the bills that we are tracking. So just a reminder for those resources. Without further ado, we're going to go over 4 pieces of legislation. As Annika said, we are lucky to be joined, I think, by members of legislative offices and also departments. So I want to make sure that I defer to the experts. I'll give a brief overview and then I will open the floor to those who have more expertise. So the first bill, House Bill 538, Senate Bill 445. The House bill is being heard tomorrow. This is Department of Human Services Federal Commodity Supplemental Food Program. So this bill would require the Family Investment Administration, which is within DHS, to be the central coordinating and directing agency of the Federal Commodity Supplemental Food Program, with those funds being received from the Department of Agriculture. Currently, this program is administered through the Department of Aging, which is incongruent with most other public assistance funds, which are administered through the Family Investment Administration. So things like food stamps, veterans benefits, etc. So a relatively simple bill. Does anybody have any questions or comments on this one?
No, but I'll just add, we had the chance to connect with Senator McCray, who's one of the sponsors, and he had noted that it's primarily just a technical fix among agencies. So it's still important, but may not be as in-depth a conversation as some other topics.
That's right. And I'll defer to Emily Bauer in a second, who's joined us, but also no fiscal impact is what the fiscal and policy note said for this bill. Emily.
Hi, good afternoon, all. My name is Emily Bauer. I'm the Senior Director for the Department of Human Services for the Office of Nutrition Assistance Programs. And I just wanted to quickly just touch on this bill. So we, just to give you a little background, so we've had some pretty intensive conversations with the Secretary of the Department of Aging, also with our DHS Secretary, and conversations with FNS about this transfer of this program. It does very closely align with our TFAP program that we've been administering for several years. And so there really is just, it's kind of, there has to be an update to the legislative language in order for DHS to take on this program. So outside of that legislative language, this probably would have already occurred. This transition would have already occurred. So it's just kind of a formality. So I just wanted to share that. But if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to talk more about it, but just wanted to share that background. Thanks.
Thank you, Emily. Any other comments or questions for this bill before we move on? All right. Senate Bill 240, House Bill 262. Senate has had a hearing on this bill, which I will talk a little bit about that in a moment. The House hearing for this bill is this coming Wednesday, the 5th. So this bill relates to the Maryland Agricultural Commission and Young Farmers. So what the bill would do is remove select representatives that are currently part of the Maryland Agriculture Commission. So currently, the statute requires a representative from nursery, from the dairy industry, from the poultry industry, from services related to agriculture, and from tobacco. Requirements for those representatives would be removed and replaced with the following. 1, controlled environmental agriculture industry. 2, socially disadvantaged farmers. 3, veteran farmers. 4, a newly established committee on young farmers. 5, urban and small farmers, and 6, beginning farmers. As it relates to the newly established Committee on Young Farmers, this bill would repeal an existing program called the Young Farmers Advisory Board and would instead establish the Committee on Young Farmers, which is tasked with communicating the importance of young and beginning farmers to state agriculture, addressing issues relating to young and beginning farmers in the state, and making recommendations to the Maryland Agricultural Commission, and is required to hold quarterly meetings. We had testimony in the Senate from the Department of Ag. The ex-secretary of the MAG also testified in support of the bill. There was no organized opposition in the Senate committee. And I will open the floor for questions on this bill.
Not to put anybody from MDA on the spot, but I know that we've got a couple representatives here. I don't know if there's anything to add. Well, certainly we can follow up as needed if there are other resources that are shared during or after the call.
All right, and with that, I'll move on to the third of the 4 bills that we will discuss. This one has a hearing on Thursday. This is Senate Bill 353. It has not been cross-filed in the House. It is a bill establishing a food deserts work group sponsored by Senator Salling. I saw that we had a representative from the senator's office on this call, and Senator Watson. So this would create a food deserts work group consisting of, among others, 1 member of the FSRC. As designated by the Secretary of Emergency Management. And then there are a bunch of other stakeholders spelled out in the bill for who would be in this work group. The job of the work group would be to conduct an analysis and report about the location and health impacts and develop solutions for food deserts in the state. And I see Senator Salling has raised a hand. I believe, yep.
I believe Danielle Coyle, the Senator's Chief of Staff, was joining. Danielle, is that you?
Having trouble hearing Danielle if it is her.
Okay. Maybe we can put a pin in. If you are speaking and we can't hear you, maybe just send a message in the chat box, and then we can come back to this for sure.
Yes, I think that is a good idea. All right, we'll move on, and if we are able to reestablish audio here, then we can certainly come back to this. This last bill that we're going to cover is by far the most complicated. It is an administration bill sponsored by the president and the speaker, and in the Senate, it's it's Senate Bill 428, House Bill 506. A hearing in the Senate is coming up on this one next Tuesday, but given how complicated the bill is, we thought we'd do an overview in advance. So, at a very basic level, this bill would establish the Maryland Leaders in Environmentally Engaged Farming, or LEAF program. They would be tasked with developing and promoting conservation of wildlife and pollinator habitats, the reduction of nutrient input, the use of natural filters, healthy soil practices, facilitating outreach and experience in agriculture to underserved communities, partnering with food banks, using renewable energy, assisting new farmers, etc. This is a synthesis of the list of duties that this program would cover, but we thought this would just be a good starter list to help understand what the bill does. If you want to look at the bill text comprehensively and see everything that this program is tasked with, I'm happy to paste a link in the chat of the bill text. With that, it establishes the LEAF program fund. The fund can receive up to $2 billion per year. The one provision restricting the funding is that it cannot be used to plant trees, but it can be used to fulfill all of the program's purposes and to cover administrative costs. And then in a separate section of the bill, it also establishes a water quality monitoring program, which would provide a statewide approach for improving water quality monitoring data. It would conduct long and short-term water quality monitoring assessments to guide programs meant to meet water quality goals, integrate monitoring data and planning processes, and provide the public with such data. So this is a distillation of that bill. I see we have a couple of hands raised, including Senator Stallings representative, and then Rachel from MDA. So I will hand over the floor. Still not.
I think we can start with Rachel.
Yeah,
maybe?
I'll start with Rachel. Yep. Go for it, Rachel.
Thank you all, and good afternoon. I was about to say morning, but it is afternoon. Okay, so I just want to give an overview of a couple of things. So the Chesapeake Bay Legacy Act, it does do a couple of other things on the DNR side as well. But for the portion of it that pertains to establishing the LEAF program at MDA, so I first want to specify MDA is really excited about this bill. Initially, we intended it to be one of our individual departmental bills, and the governor really liked it so much that it became a part of this package in the Chesapeake Bay Act. So what we realized this morning is that this second bullet has to be amended. So the portion about the funding mechanism has to be amended. So to better explain, if you all remember last year, Senator Elfreth's Best in Show bill, that would have provided funding. It would have taken funding from the Bay Restoration Fund and a couple of other funding sources, and it would have been used to incentivize farmers to utilize best management practices that were good for the Chesapeake Bay. That bill passed in the Senate, I believe, last year, but then not in the House. And so what we did is we took that concept and said, if we can establish a program where we incentivize farmers to utilize all kinds of practices that would be environmentally friendly and reward them for that, we think that would be great. So LEAF is essentially our version of, if you're familiar with LEED certification standards for buildings, we're basically going to frame a program in which we establish tiers of gold, silver, and bronze, and we recognize farmers or landowners for different practices that they install, or for different relationships. Like what's not in the bill that we are talking about putting in the eligibility criteria for LEAF certification is whether or not you partner with farmers markets, whether or not you provide food to nonprofits to help feed low-income families and things like that, or the underserved. These are things that we want to make sure go into the certification process, but we knew the budget was tight. And so we said, where do we have existing funds here at MDA that we could possibly divert towards LEAF? And we looked at the fact that the Tree Solutions Now Act gave us $2.5 million annually to award grants to farmers or landowners interested in planting trees on their farm. However, in recent years, we noticed we were not using or not issuing more than 500 grand on average. So every year we were reverting $2 to $2.1 to $2.2 million back to the general fund because we weren't getting enough applicants for tree plantings. And so we initially wrote the bill to allow us to use up to $2 million from the Tree Solutions Now Act for the LEAF program, still leaving that 500 grand on average for tree plantings should we get, that same kind of record number of applicants for that funding. What we realized is that even just this morning, is that we're going to have to put in an amendment with the budget being like it is, and with DBM looking for funding sources at agencies that they felt could be cut. As you all know, many programs received cuts. So in the governor's budget, what they did is they cut the Tree Solutions Now funding based on the fact that we said, hey, this money's underutilized. They cut the funding for Tree Solutions Now to 500 grand. So now that excess 2 million will not be in MDA's budget, but what the governor's budget did do is allocate or specify that $900,000 annually would be allocated specifically for the LEAF program fund. And so what we just realized this morning is that we didn't reconcile that in the Chesapeake Bay Legacy Act after the governor's budget came out, because we had, of course, drafted these bills in the fall. So The bill will need to be amended to specify that the fund will be $900,000 annually, and it will no longer come from or be diverted from the Tree Solutions Now money. So I did want to clarify that.
Thank you so much, Rachel, for that very helpful description and clarification. Do we still have Senator Saling's office on the line? Or not yet? I know they're having issues with the microphone. All right. Still seems like we don't have them. Any other questions or comments, especially as long as Rachel from MDA is here on this legislation before us?
Ben, or Rachel, did you have any comments about the other bill that had come up?
Um,
Okay, no, sorry, I didn't know if you
Not any of
knew.
the previously discussed ones, no.
Okay,
But I will also add what the Chesapeake Bay Legacy Act also does is it creates a definition for regenerative practices in agriculture, and that is to help more of our farmers who don't utilize some of the more traditional practices. So there are folks who specialize in using practices that are believed to be healthier for the soil, minimal to no fertilizers or pesticides and things like that. And so it basically establishes a definition of regenerative practices that and states that MDA will recognize those. And so that will, of course, be something that we factor into LEAF certification standards as well. And then the bill on the DNR side, because this is a joint effort with DNR, it also gives the ability to make it legal for EKGMA processing to be utilized on ships to help with the invasive species that we have, like the blue catfish and things like that. And so if you're not familiar, it's EKGMA is a process in which you almost use like a shock type of processing to keep the fish fresher on the ship, so that rigor mortis and all of that doesn't set in. It creates it leaves a fresher, I guess, taste for the fish when you're trying to sell it and get it to market. And retailers, particularly internationally, have expressed a desire in blue catfish and some of our other invasive species here, but because they're used to that fresher taste, because that's how they process their fish and that's how they treat them, essentially fresh off the boat. So it would basically give Maryland watermen the ability to use that same process here in Maryland. So that's one of the other tenets of the bill on the DNR side of it.
Thank you. Yeah, Annika?
Rachel, I just have one question for you about the LEAF program. So if this bill is passed, when does the LEAF program get implemented, or when is it launched?
I'd have to go back and look at the effective date. I think we initially asked for October 1, but I can't remember.
Effective date in the bill is July 1st.
July 1. Okay. And we're fine with that. What we're doing now is we're starting listening sessions. The first one is going to be held next week. I can put a link in the chat if you're interested, but MDA's resource conservation team is going to start holding listening sessions to hear from stakeholders across the state so that we can use that feedback to make sure that we're putting in the type of criteria for LEAF that people all across the state want to see in that program. So if you've got practices that you're using on your farmer property or with your agribusiness or in a relationship with a farm that you think should be a criteria that's considered for a LEAF certification, those are things that our team wants to hear. And so I'm going to put this link in the chat now so that you all can have that. So we're going to be hosting listening sessions so that by the time July 1 comes, our team intends to be ready to have our draft regulations ready to go. So we had thought October 1 initially, but we'll be ready July 1.
Great. I believe Danielle from Senator Salling's office is in through the phone if you want to address the previous bill. Going once. Still more technical difficulties. No? Okay. Well, we'll keep going, and if she is able to join at any point, I'm happy to stop and defer to her. Moving on, just to quickly review bills
Hi,
that we...
can you hear me?
Yes, now we can hear you.
Oh my goodness, I am so sorry. Still
That's
having
okay.
technical issues. Hi, I'm Danielle from Senator Salling's office. I am so sorry for all of that. There was some reason that the website wasn't, my computer was not allowing the website to access my microphone. And then when I dialed in, it automatically muted me. I had to unmute myself. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
So regarding SB 353, the Food Desert Work Group, we ended up putting an amendment that kind of changes the bill in its entirety from a work group to a study that will require the Maryland Food System Resiliency Council to identify the food desert and public health and safety risks and of people living in food desert areas, and help promote social equity by addressing disparities in access to health food options. We are adding in our testimony that we would like the stakeholders that we had talked to over the interim to be a part of the conversation. If the Maryland Food System Resiliency Council will allow it. But in essence, this amendment makes the FSRC head the entire study. So that's why I wanted to jump on really quickly to let you guys know that.
Okay. That's a big change. Anybody want to comment on Danielle's proposed amendment from Senator Salling's office? Or I know
Does
that's
Annika and MDEM have the resources to do this work? That's maybe a rhetorical question.
Yeah, that I'm not sure. We were asked by someone to put this amendment in. So I'm hoping that MDEM does have the resources to do this. We would definitely prefer that our stakeholders and other state departments would help in this research. But as it stands now, the Food System Resiliency Council would be heading this study.
So just to confirm, there are no funds that are appropriated through the bill?
No.
Thank you. I see a hand from Emily.
Not
Thank
that I'm
you.
aware.
Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. So I was just curious, with the revision of the bill, does it specify, I guess, does it specifically outline what the study would require? Like what?
Yes, it
What
does.
you're-
It does
Okay.
basically outline it.
Okay.
Let me take a look here. Sorry, I should have had it pulled up. Food desert. Give me 1 second. It would specifically outline it would outline identify areas where residents have limited access to affordable and nutritious food, identify the health and public safety risks residents would face due to living in food desert areas, promote social equity by addressing disparities and access to healthy food options, assess potential economic opportunities, such as the potential for new businesses and the use of existing financial incentives for grocery stores and supermarket retailers in the areas. Those are the main ones.
Okay, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I so appreciate your coming on and kind of sharing those updates. And so I think we hadn't been aware of the amendment. It sounds like it was incorporated as a result of feedback. I think was the goal to create ownership of the work, or I'm just curious.
We were advised that the Food System Resiliency Council would be the best segue into this. We were told that the FSRC would be the best option in order to get our bill passed.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I know that our chairs of the FSRC aren't on today on this meeting today, just as a subcommittee, but do you know if they've been engaged yet in discussions to help kind of guide that process?
Not yet. It's a new amendment. We haven't had a chance.
Okay, great. Yeah, well, so it's hot off the presses. So thank you so much for working through all of the technical challenges to get here to share that. I had just one question also about the definition of food deserts that's being used.
That would be one of the things that the Food System Resiliency Council would be doing. Our original bill had 16 different people from different state departments and local organizations that would help define food deserts. But now with the amendment, it would be the Food System Resiliency Council that would be doing that, which is why we would like, and Senator Salling is going to have it in his testimony, we would like to invite these particular people in state departments and local community organizations to be invited into the conversation. So that way it's not just on the Food System Resiliency Council, it would be on others as well. So that way everybody could collaborate.
Great. Wonderful. Thank you again for the additional information. Definitely lots to think about, and we'll look forward to kind of seeing the full amendment. I know it just got put in. Are there other questions from? I know we've got a bunch of FSRC members and other community partners here. Any additional questions for Senator Salling's office? Okay, well, I'm sure we will follow up with additional questions if they are raised, but thanks again so much for being with us today. We know that it is a very busy time.
Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Great.
All right. Moving on, just on a couple of things that we've talked about, bills that we've talked about previously. We had a hearing in the Senate on the procurement from the State Department of Education bill. That was Senate Bill 177. House Bill 66, I believe it's, or 56, I believe it's cut off at the beginning of the screen, has a hearing tomorrow at 2 p.m. In Health and Government Operations on the House side. So that's tomorrow at 2 p.m. House version of the procurement bill that we discussed. And then a few notes from hearings that we did watch over the past week. There was a Senate hearing on the Maryland Farms and Families Fund, the Purpose and Use Alterations Bill. Rachel testified, so I don't know if, Rachel, you have anything to add based on your testimony in support of this bill, but there was no opposition at the Senate hearing.
Sure, Ben, and I know Steve knows about this as well. And so basically, our marketing team and SMATIC kind of reached out to us and said, what could we do about this? Because right now, it just basically takes longer to go through the RFP every year to get the funding awarded to the folks who utilize the FMNP program. because the current law says that the fund has to be granted to a nonprofit. However, we've never had a nonprofit actually be the recipient and be the one who distributes the fund. And so, Marbitco has stood up different entities throughout the years who have applied for the funding, and then they've awarded the funding to SMATIC, the Southern Maryland Agricultural Development Commission, who has actually awarded the fund. And so what the bill does is it amends the law to say that we can award the fund directly to a government entity, but we, kind of specified we'd like to be able to continue awarding it directly to SMATIC, which is a subsidiary of the Tri-County Council of Southern Maryland, since we have an existing MOU with them, and they are the ones who have consistently dispersed the fund. That way, it'll just help us streamline the process and get the funding to the folks who need it a lot quicker every year.
Great. Thank you so much, Rachel.
Yeah.
Seeing any other questions or comments on this bill, move to solid waste disposal surcharge and wasted food reduction and diversion fund and grant programs bill, which we discussed in a previous meeting. The Senate hearing is coming up next week, next Tuesday at 1 p.m. There was a hearing in the House. Dr. Lansing testified, I believe, as Annika mentioned at the beginning of this meeting, on behalf of FSRC. Rachel, you testified as well on this bill. Because this does set up the surcharge for waste or solid waste disposal, we did get unfavorable testimony from the National Waste and Disposal Association and from Evergreen Disposal's Director of Public Affairs for Waste Management. So I don't know if anybody who was at this hearing on the House side, Dr. Lansing or Rachel, if you have anything else to add from that hearing.
Sure. I'll just say that the entities or groups that opposed this year also opposed last year. But one of the things that the bill sponsor, the Vice Chair, Regina Boyce, brought up is the fact that our neighboring states charge a similar fee. And with the exception of, I think, one state that maybe charges $1, I think the rest of them are all significantly higher than $2. And I understand the opposition feeling like they're being forced to pay for food waste and foot the bill for that. And it's not necessarily that's the case. But I think, again, if the budget were in a better position and the state had it in the coffers to establish a fund specifically for this, obviously that would be easier, right? But that's not the case. And so, Delegate Boyce, in our conversations, both last session and this session, in preparation for this bill, in conversations with MDE and Dr. Lansing and other partners, basically decided that if neighboring states are using a tipping fee for the solid waste disposal providers, then they thought that this would be an acceptable thing for Maryland to take on as well. So I couldn't tell from the energy in the committee room whether or not the bill will have better momentum this year than it had last year, but I know these are the same concerns that were raised last year.
Thank you again, Rachel. And by the way, this is not the last time I'm going to call on you because you've testified at a lot of hearings.
Okay.
So stay tuned.
Okay.
Big news on House Bill 8. So this was the bill relating to food and milk product labeling to try and transition us to best if used by or used by to indicate a quality date and a safety date. Delegate Harrison announced during the hearing for this bill that she would be withdrawing the bill for this session. They want to continue to work on it with the Department of Health, with MDH through the interim. There was some testimony in opposition. Somebody from the Maryland Retailers Alliance testified in opposition, just talking about concerns with the burden of compliance. and noted that it might be incongruent with other state labeling requirements. So this bill, it hasn't been formally withdrawn from the MDGA website, but based on the testimony at the hearing, this bill will be withdrawn, and Delegate Harrison will try and work on a potential solution through the interim. Annika again mentioned HB 9, the FSRC bill. Dr. Lansing testified. Anna Sierra, who I don't think is on the call, and Rachel again testified in support. That happened last Wednesday. Anything on that one, Rachel?
It was basically a me too for us at MDA. We wanted to back up MDEM and the great work that they do here with the FSRC. We wanted to stress the importance of it. And also, I know that there were some requirements that Anna had discussed with me, some things that were in there that it was important for MDA to stress, even if those things don't happen to be in the strategic plan that FSRC has. It's okay because MDA already has several programs that are doing these things. And because we are a member of the FSRC and work, in coordination with MDEM on a lot of these things, we just wanted to stress that, the FSRC can address these things. And if MDA needs to provide information and certain data from certain reports to make sure that the council has the information they need, that we're happy to do that.
All right, thank you, Rachel. Last bill for which we have an update, the Food, Forest, and Foraging Bill. There was a hearing in the House last week on the 29th. One of the people testifying was Dylan Beller. At the time, he was the legislative director for DNR. Over the weekend, he was selected to fill a vacancy in the House of Delegates. So soon he will be Delegate Dylan Beller. He was the former chief of staff to now Congresswoman Sarah Elfreth. There was also positive testimony from a student and founder of the Permaculture Club at Montgomery College, and Lincoln Smith, who is the founder of Forested. Delegate Healy asked, I think, a really important question as to what the impact this bill would have on currently existing free food forests. And the sponsor of the bill clarified that the bill would not force people to pay for existing food forests that are currently free for foraging. There is going to be a hearing on this bill in the Senate next Tuesday, the 11th. Any questions on this bill? Seeing none, we have a list of other bills that may be of interest where there are upcoming hearings, bills that we did not cover extensively on these calls. Again, Annika will send out the slides, so you'll have a list of these at your disposal. There's also the calendar that you can always check for upcoming hearings. We talked about the budget last week. No changes on that front, as the legislature is still working with the governor's proposal, so no update on the budget. Note in terms of important dates, we have a deadline this evening. I believe it's at 4 p.m. for the introduction of bills in the Senate. So any bills introduced after today at 4 p.m. are going to face a bunch of procedural hurdles. So we expect there are going to be 100 to 200 Senate bills filed today that we're going to try and work our way through. And there's that same deadline for the House on Friday. March 3rd is the last day for introduction of bills without requiring suspension of the rules. Crossover day is March 17th, and sine die, which always approaches faster than one would think, is coming up on April 7th. Any questions on any of the bills we discussed today, or for anybody who was on the call? Seeing none, I will hand it back to our chair.
Well, lots happening, and there are many talented individuals on this call who are contributing a lot of time to attend the sessions, update us on the work that's happening, provide input and insight into all these legislative processes, and then share it with all of you on our Monday calls. I know we've got about 17 minutes before we're scheduled to be done. So are there comments, questions, updates on bills that we didn't talk about, or highlights that you would like to share with the group? Okay, well, I know that there are lots of bills that we are watching that are still in the pipeline. I will note that we'll have a call next Monday, but the Monday after that is President's Day. So we'll be taking a little bit of a break, but the work will continue over that hiatus to keep everybody updated on hearings that are scheduled, on new bills that are filed. And as Ben has already shared with us, it's a fast-paced timeline, but I think soon, you know, following the crossover date, it will at least stabilize a little bit. But we are really trying to make sure that that tracker is updated, not just with those that were bills that we're highlighting during the call, but also those that we think that you would be interested in potentially, and want to make sure they're on your radar. So seeing no other comments or questions, much appreciation to Ben and Annette and Annika and everybody who has shared expertise and insight today. Anything that I missed?
Thank you, Heather.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. Well, we will see you all next Monday at 1. And thanks everybody for your time.
Thanks. Take care.